April 10th, 2018 Port Orchard City Council regular meeting. We have Ricky from PAC 4528 here this evening, and he's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ricky. All right. Do we have any amendments to tonight's agenda?
Mayor,
Yes, sir.
I would like to add a discussion item for 7H, and this is additional discussion on the bird problem, the bird feeding problem down at West Bay.
Oh, okay.
I know we talked about it once before, but I like
Birds
that.
on waterfront.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a second to add that as a discussion item?
Second.
Motion and a second to add that to the agenda. Further discussion of adding it? All in favor of adding discussion of birds on the waterfront to the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that has been added as item H. Are there any other proposed? Yes, Mr. Clausen.
I was just going to move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the agenda as amended. Any further discussion of the agenda? All in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is approved. We are to our first citizen comment period, and this first period is for anything on the agenda this evening. So if you'd like to address the council, you have up to 3 minutes. So let's step forward and identify yourself.
My name's Karen Money.
Mic up a little bit for us. There we go.
Is that pretty good?
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so.
My name's Karen Money, and I've been working and advocating to prohibit the sale of puppies in pet stores. And I wanted to thank you all so much for your consideration of this for quite a lengthy period of time. Thank you. And here's why we think the proposed wording amending Title VII might be inadequate. Puppy mills don't call themselves puppy mills. They call themselves breeders. Puppy mills don't volunteer that their care is inadequate, and even the USDA paperwork doesn't guarantee any humane treatment. USDA requirements are survival standards alone, not humane care, and puppy mills change names or locations if governments infringe on their profits. Pet stores tell customers the puppy mill puppies are from family breeders. The USDA documents prove that's not true. With the amendment written as you have proposed, the only store in Kitsap County that currently sells puppy mill puppies would be able to open their store in Port Orchard and continue to sell their milled puppies. The only way to ensure the puppy mills are not profiting in Port Orchard is to state no puppies shall be sold at pet stores unless done so in cooperation with animal welfare organizations. This doesn't create an animal rescue monopoly. No breeders in Kitsap are selling their puppies in pet stores now. This doesn't change how local breeders profit. In fact, the wording that we suggest funnels more customers to local breeders. Thank you.
Thank you for comments.
Dear Port Orchard Council members, my name is Teresa Donnelly. I'm the Director for Advocacy for local nonprofit Their Voice, a volunteer district leader for the Humane Society of the United States, and I've been advocating for humane breeding practices for the last 11 years as a breeder, a dog exhibitor, and a loving dog owner. Thank you for looking at this measure, although I do feel it is problematic for 2 primary reasons. There's a requirement that Port Orchard won't sell from puppy mills, which falls under a false premise and is the assumption that you can definitively know through due process which breeders are operating in inhumane conditions and which ones are treating their animals with care. It's similar to passing an ordinance that predators cannot attain a teaching license, as if a predator would self-identify as such before getting one. We do not know which animals treat animals poorly because the USDA does not even enforce the most basic survival standards. The public is unable to assess records online due to them being taken down, missing data, and even when FOIA'd, we get redacted reports. Secondly, there's no language in this replacement ordinance that prohibits breeders from selling to pet stores and instead having them only offer animals from shelters and rescues. No responsible breeder sells to a pet store. And the reason I know this is because I am and was a responsible breeder. I partnered with 2 families 8 years back and I bred my male boxer dog. Each family went through an extensive research process and screening process to ensure those animals went to good homes. We asked intrusive questions. We did genetic health testings just to make sure that the dogs that we were breeding were safe, behaviorally and genetically. If we thought that they were aggressive, we wouldn't have bred them. And we wanted to know who ended up with the dogs, and we kept in touch with those people. So in case they wanted to take that dog back, they had the opportunity to do so. And none of this loving care happens when we sell as consumers through a pet shop retailer. And the inspection records that you can find online about the USDA, which my colleague is about to talk about, confirm everything that I'm saying. To remedy these discrepancies, you can modify the operational requirements, number 8, to read, a pet shop may offer for sale only those dogs and cats the pet shop is obtained from or in cooperation with an animal shelter or an animal rescue league. To reiterate, I ask that you please strike the argument that the city has the ability to ban Port Orchard pet stores from sourcing from puppy mills. And for this ordinance to adequately protect puppies and kittens, it must ban commercial sales. 255 other cities across the United States, to include California, Maryland General Assembly just passed this measure, and Pennsylvania is looking at it as well. So this is a countrywide issue that people are protecting. We ask that Port Orchard do the same. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hello, City Council members. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. I've talked to many of you. My name is Kim Siebens, and I'm here today representing myself in support of an ordinance that would ban the sale of puppies and kittens in pet stores that are not done so in cooperation with an official animal welfare organization. Many people don't realize that the USDA, who is responsible for protecting animals from cruelty and suffering, is failing animals. USDA paperwork from commercial breeders that pet stores will show you does not constitute a good dog breeder. Unfortunately, a USDA licensed puppy mill is still a puppy mill. Even if a breeder complies with all of the USDA requirements, standards of care are shockingly low. Licensed facilities can keep dogs in cramped, stacked wire cages for their entire lives, such as the PowerPoint presentation that I showed some of you. They don't provide adequate veterinary care, socialization of exercise, yet many fail to even meet the low standards, and the USDA continues to license them year after year. To make matters worse, the USDA is currently protecting animal abusers by redacting all pertinent information from animal welfare inspection reports that used to be available to the public. In February of 17, thousands of documents detailing animal welfare violations nationwide were removed from the website of the USDA, and that has been public for decades before that time. These are the inspection records and annual reports for every commercial animal facility in the U.S. This information is vital not only for the safety of these animals, but also for the education of prospective pet owners and the enforcement of protective animal welfare laws and regulations. How do we expect breeders to be held accountable, buyers to be aware, and law enforcement to enforce if we're hiding the very information that they need to act responsibly? These reports are critical in monitoring animal cruelty and commercial dog breeding. Removing them has severely undermined the ability to prevent even the most extreme animal abuse. As an example, the USDA was asked to provide the most recent inspection reports of 15 puppy breeders. It took 9 months to get this, and when it arrived, we got 54 pages of this, total blackout. Every word of every inspection, from the date to the violations, which is this part, were redacted from the documents that they provided. The agency responded by saying that they can't provide it because personnel and medical files would constitute a quote, clearly unwarranted invasion of their personal privacy. By hiding these records of welfare violations, this agency is robbing journalists, investigators, and the public of timely information, and it takes the pressure off the abusers. Lastly, I hope you're aware that the USDA inspection process is woefully inadequate. There are currently only about 100 APHIS inspectors. If you don't know, that stands for Animal and Plant Health Inspection Services. And they're supposed to inspect over 8,000 facilities, 100 people. So these inspectors are severely overworked, underfunded, and absolutely unable to adequately inspect and enforce the Animal Welfare Act, which was passed way back in 1966. Our treatment of animals speaks volumes about us. When our government cannot fulfill its responsibilities, it falls to us to step up and speak out. I hope that the city council.
Expired.
I have one sentence left.
Okay.
I hope that this city council does right by the Port Orchard community, which means doing its job to protect the people and the pets who live here. This is why change has to happen here at the grassroots level, because Washington has no laws, and my evidence supports that the USDA is failing dogs and kittens bad. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, everybody. Thanks again. Margie Moore. And again, I'm asking that you not approve the red line replacement changes to the current ordinance on the books because they don't adequately protect the consumers or the animals. But the changes that we're proposing, or the ordinance that we're proposing, will still allow breeders to breed, will still allow people to source their own pets, their family pets, from bona fide animal welfare organizations, shelters and rescues. What wasn't addressed in the current red line, as it's currently redlined, is Section 716080, operation requirements, paragraph 7, that it says ownership of an animal offered for sale, the owner, manager of the pet shop shall maintain written documentation of the source of all animals offered on consignment or otherwise being sold for compensation at a pet shop. Such documentation shall include a copy of the valid commercial kennel license, which is exactly what we're trying to prevent, because it's the commercial kennel licensees that are the problem here, and this is what your law currently says, for the source of, at the time of breeding and disbursement. So I just wanted to point that out. And then I also have, I don't know why I'm so nervous, you guys are so awesome, a Journal of Veterinary Behavior article, and it is Journal of Veterinary Behavior, Behavioral and Psychological Outcomes for Dogs Sold as Puppies through Pet Stores and or born in commercial breeding establishments, current knowledge and putative causes. And I'm not going to read the whole thing because I don't have enough time, but it says right here that when sources were compared, dogs obtained from pet shops were overrepresented in the groups of dogs with certain behavior problems compared with those obtained from breeders, friends, or relatives, or bred at home. Dominance type aggression, aggression directed towards people, children, family members, especially the dog's owner, was more common among dogs acquired from pet stores, and pet store acquired dogs often demonstrated more social fears. And then this was an international survey. Dogs acquired from other sources, which included pet stores and internet sites, were 1.8 times as likely to show human-directed aggression as those obtained from breeders. So, thank you so much for your time.
Comments? Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening? There is another. Sherry, go ahead.
Hello. I've become a person addicted to TV lately, and one of the first things that was on about the new administration that we received last year was the repeal of about the animals, and especially they mentioned the state, I think, of Pennsylvania, that used those documents to make sure that laws that they had passed would, without those, they couldn't keep track of the puppy mills. And at that point, they started saying that the states and the local municipalities are going to have to be the ones that take up the fight against the repeal of so many of the things with the EPA and different organizations, the rules that are being disbanded. So it now is upon you to make sure that laws are maintained, because it's not being done on our federal government. And so even though you may not want this responsibility, it's been pushed off on you. And I think that you need to go through and make it where we do not have the puppy mills. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening? Yes, ma'am.
My name's Donna Hickson, and I'm one of the dog trainers that have to work with these aggressive animals, and I would like very much to have a lot less work when we get our puppies through rescue and we can tell where they came from. We often run into clients and you ask them where they got their puppy, they can say the pet store they got it from, they can't say where the pet store got it, and they can't get information. Often these puppies come with papers that don't even belong to them.
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else wishing to address the council?
Hi, I'm Tina Meekins, and I fully support this effort here. I work with animals, I work with children, and I have a lot of experience, mostly with horses, but I have seen aggressive animals, and they came from stores. So, and I see what they do to kids, and it's not pretty. So, thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Hi, I've talked to you guys earlier. Thank you for letting us come and speak again. I'm Elizabeth Drowan, and I'm just going to talk to you from my personal experience. I don't know if you recall the last time I was here, but I was a police officer for 31 years and retired from that. And following that, I went to work for a nonprofit organization that investigates animal cruelty. So I have a pretty good idea of what the procedures look like, what it takes to get inside of these facilities. I'll just say very quickly that developing probable cause and developing current and accurate information to get inside something is almost impossible, because by the time people get to you, it's probably a minimum 3, 4, 5, 6 days, maybe a month has gone by. And that's prohibitive of going in and handling these things. On a personal experience, I grew up thinking purebred animals were kind of like the elite and for rich people and a better breeding. Well, what I've learned in my years, I currently have a horse, had to go out and get a registered quarter horse, was on top of that. He runs me about $1,000 a month today for his medical costs because of his crappy breeding. He was bred to be a racehorse, and he was a reject because he wasn't good enough for that industry. He's now in my checking account, draining it as fast as he can, and I love him, and I wouldn't trade him for anything. I've also had, I don't know if I can talk about this. It's been about 10 months since I lost my dog. He was dumped at the shelter by his family when he was 5. He was almost completely blind from cataracts. He was not neutered. I took him in because he sucked me in. And we just lost him last June, and he probably cost me about $8,000 trying to save his eyes from a purebred dog breeder. So I'm just telling you that these animals that come out as supposed to be these great, wonderful animals, they aren't that. We had another dog about 15 years ago, and I bought her when I was a young adult in my early 20s, and I thought, I'm gonna get myself a really cool, I can't remember what she is, the big golden retriever. And we had to put her down at 7 because the vet said that she had the worst degenerative back disorder he had ever seen in all of his practice. So please don't think that these breeders are breeding to give you these high-quality, incredible animals. The mutt dogs, the mutt cats are the ones that vets will tell you are probably the healthiest, because the genes get weeded out. So I beg of you to do something to stop these people having an outlet for that, and to make the animals through pet stores only be coming from shelters and rescues, because those guys need homes just as bad as anybody else. Thank you. Sorry, I kind of...
Thank you for your comment. Anyone else wishing to address the council tonight?
My name is Dina Castle. I'm also for the inability to sell pets, puppies, kittens at pet stores. No reputable breeder that is passionate about their breed and does the health testing that is mandated by each parent club in the United States will use a pet store to sell their puppies. They have their own websites that they operate from. They have people that are references. They have word of mouth. One of the best references they have is their own puppies that are produced that become good representatives of their breed. The puppies that are in pet stores end up typically with not only social problems, behavioral issues, aggression issues. They don't receive the proper care that's required of getting a puppy or a kitten that's placed in a good family home. A lot of them, as has already been stated, they end up with issues because they're not being raised properly, they're not being given the proper stimulus, the proper exercise, the proper socialization that any reputable breeder strives to do in order to place their puppies and kittens in proper homes. They have wait lists for their dogs, they have interview processes, they have application processes that ensure that these puppies and kittens go to a proper home, so that the people don't in 6 months go, I didn't realize it was going to get that big, or I didn't realize it was going to be so much work because a puppy has an issue, whether it's a social behavioral problem or aggression. They just don't know what to do. They don't have the support that a reputable breeder has because they've obtained the puppy or kitten from a pet store. Pet store employees do not know a lot about the different breeds that come into the pet stores. They have sometimes no clue what the different health aspects, the different social aspects, the different types of temperament that a dog is expected to have. This is where the reputable breeder comes in, and that's where these people need to be getting the purebreds. I applaud the idea of having pet stores have rescues and animal shelters have representation. But a reputable breeder does not need to have a pet store to sell their puppies. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Yes, I am a dog breeder, and I also represent a Great Dane Rescue here in Washington, a nonprofit.
Anyone else wishing to address the council this evening for anything that's on the agenda?
Good evening. Thank you again for your time. My name is Diane. I am a founder and president of a local education and nonprofit rescue association. I'm a certified and professional dog trainer and have been for over 25 years. What I'd like to address right now is the behavioral consequences that retail sale of dogs has on our community, as Liz has talked to briefly. For the last 10 years, I've been involved in rescuing dogs from high-kill areas in Missouri where puppy mills create a huge overpopulation problem. Missouri has over 600 active puppy mills in that state alone. Our organization puts dogs in foster homes and goes through the same screening process that you've heard quite a bit about, which I won't go into detail. In the last 2 decades, dogs have become a family member, a part of our home versus a farm animal. They come into our homes, they live with us, they sleep with us, they play with our children. It is not the type of product that you should buy in a retail environment, because the screening that's required to make that happen and make it happen successfully doesn't happen in a retail environment. Reputable breeders know this, which is why they do not use retail sales. The dogs that are sold, as you've heard in retail sales, are all dogs from puppy mills. Over the past several years, I have on multiple occasions visited a local feed store in Silverdale that sells puppies. I've gone in as a secret shopper, looking to see the paperwork on 5 or 6 different dogs, asking to interact with the dogs, and in every case, those dogs have all come from the same breeder in Missouri. I asked, are these puppy mill dogs, because I was concerned, and I was told no, they were not. I then contacted my representative in Missouri that I rescue from, and they were very familiar with the breeder. That area has been trying to get that breeder shut down for several years, and they've been unable to. It's a USDA-approved facility. When individuals seek to purchase a purebred dog, they are expecting an animal that has been bred responsibly, socialized, which, by the way, is between 4 and 16 weeks. And people want a quality product. They don't get that. These poorly bred, under-socialized dogs grow into extremely aggressive and oftentimes fearful animals. We've gotten puppies off the plane that have never touched grass before, and these become our behavioral issues. Over the past 15 years, we have tried to get this unsuccessfully limited to non-retail sales. All attempts have been shut down by the retail owners. So I am pleased asking you to ban the sale of dogs and cats in a retail environment so that the consumer and the community gets a safe product. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name is Adam Perkins. Just a couple of quick thoughts about this topic. I don't mind being able to go into a pet store, being able to buy a dog or cat or this kind of thing, because I honestly believe that it's my responsibility as a consumer to know what I'm getting into, right? I'm going to go buy a Mustang vehicle and drive it very quickly through a school zone. It's my responsibility to control that, right? So if I go buy a dog, I'm going to learn how to raise a dog and take care of a dog and that kind of thing. I honestly don't believe that a dog coming out of a pet store can have any different temperament than a breeder's dog. It all depends on how that dog is raised. I honestly believe that. I have a black lab myself who I got from a breeder. I have a cat who I got from a cat store. We have these different pets that we raise and take care of because we're responsible members of society. I don't think that the council needs to determine where we buy a dog. I'm having a hard time with the personal accountability part of this. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you for your comments. Others wish to comment this evening? Okay, we have another comment period at the end of the meeting. So I'll close the public comment period, the first public comment period. We are on to our consent agenda. It's pretty light, but is there a motion to approve?
I would make,
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a second. Further discussion of the consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of approval of the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda has been approved. Mr. Crocker, you've got a presentation for us tonight on our biennial budget.
Let's go and then I'll grab
Well, while I'm waiting for Brandy to get the clicker, I just want to thank the mayor and council and members of the public for being here tonight. If the council recalls, when we conducted our mid-year review of the biennial budget in December, Finance Department stated we would come back after the end of the first quarter and report back to the council of how we were performing through the end of 2017, as it's kind of a good midpoint through our biennial budget. Down? One more. So tonight we're going to review our major operational funds and our capital projects through the end of 2017. The major operational funds we'll focus on are the general fund, the street funds, water sewer fund, storm drainage fund, and then we'll review our capital budgeted projects. Now again, recall that the city adopts a biennial budget, which represents a 24-month period. We're simply reviewing the actual expenditures and revenues during the first 12 months of this 24-month period. So the first fund we'll look at is the general fund. Through the end of 2017, the city collected approximately 51% of its biennial budget. Through the end of 2017, the city spent approximately 49% of its biennial budget. From a high-level perspective, this tells me that we're roughly 50% through our biennial budget, and with revenues about 50% and expenditures about 50%, we are on track and on budget with what we adopted. So that's good news. When we broke it down even further and looked at expenses by department, we found that all departments were under their 50% kind of biennial target, which is good for our midway point through the biennial period. If you recall, any biennial budget authority that isn't spent in the first 12 months is reallocated to the next 12 months. So we have not changed the biennial budget. We've just shifted the authority into the next spending period. And that's why you'll see that capacity remaining for all departments is up, because they did not use that capacity in the first 12 months. That's strange. Have you seen this, Brandy? No, I don't. No. I wanted to walk through the street fund, which is being overlaid by a big circle. Okay, well, we'll ignore the big circle. And if you can see the bars across, again, we have a similar story with the street fund, where 51% of our revenues collected from our biennial budget were received in the first 12 months. Again, that's a positive. That indicates to me that our target, our revenue target for the next 12 months is less than 50%, and that's good. Again, for the first 12 months of our biennial budget, we have lower expenses, 42%. So that, again, that capacity of expenditure authority is pushed into the next 12 months. So again, for the street fund, we are on track and on budget. The slide, although it's hard to see at the top there, this represents the water and sewer fund. We've excluded all capital out of here, so we're, again, focusing on operations. Good. We're just going to continue this positive story that 50% of our biennial budget was received the first 12 months, which means our revenue target, again, for the next 12 is about 50%. We're right on. Either we're really good budgeters, I don't know what to say, but it's really good news. Again, and expenses are less than what we had anticipated. Again, the budget authority is then pushed into the next 12 months. Now, when we met with the Finance Committee and kind of went over these results, one thing they requested was that we split the water and sewer fund into water operations and sewer operations, just to get some perspective on that. So again, here we have the water operations continue to promote the same positive story that the first 12 months are positive. Now, water collections is approximately 5% higher than 50% for this first 12 months. Again, that tells me that we have a lower revenue target for the next 12 months, which is good, is a positive sign. Water revenue, again, is driven by consumption and rates. And one thing that helps to explain this kind of higher percentage that you didn't see on the other charts is that when the city budgets and anticipates water consumption, we take a slight conservative approach to it. We don't want to be aggressive on making assumptions about how much water people are going to consume. So we take a conservative approach with it, which is reflective in those first 12 months that we're positive by about 5% of our budget. Now, turn our attention to the sewer operations. We find that the revenues realized for the first 12 months on sewer is about 47%, so slightly less than 50%. And I want to think about sewer slightly different because sewer does not have the consumption element to our revenues. So what this means is that we expect a larger portion of our biennial budget to be received in the second 12-month period. And if you think about it, that makes sense because we have sewer rate increases. And so as rate increases in the next 12 months, you would expect higher revenue with consistent consumption or a consistent variable. So again, that helps to explain why when we look at this from a holistic biennial perspective, the first 12 months are going to represent a lower portion of your revenue, with the next 12 months representing a higher portion of that biennial budget. But again, when we looked at what we budgeted versus what we expected, this is exactly what we expected. Again, we are on track. The last fund I have up here from an operational standpoint is the storm drainage fund. Again, I'm just repeating myself, but it's positive that we're collected about 51% of our revenues, and we've expended about 50% of our biennial budget. So moving on from operations, we're going to review the capital projects. Again, we'll review projects that we budgeted for in water, sewer, storm, park facilities, and transportation. So first of all, when I present graphs, I always like to orient folks to the tables or charts that I'm presenting so they can follow the information and understand what they're looking at. If you can identify that the top white boxes at the top there, those represent the total current budget authority. The yellow orangish bars represent current available budget capacity, okay? And then that brownish column represents actual spent to date. As you can see in this table, we haven't done a whole lot of work on the water capital project side in 2017. However, later in the agenda tonight, we'll have an award contract for well 9 on the table, and we can discuss some of the other projects. But the two main ones on the water side are water well 9 and water well number 13. Again, as you recall, well 13 was delayed to the state capital budget process and negotiations. We expect to have scope and budget back for council approval over the next 2 months. So we expect to see more activity coming out of the water capital projects in 2018 for good reasons. Next, we are reviewing the sewer projects. Thus far, we have seen some work completed on the sewer Tremont improvements, and hopefully we expect to see some work started for Pump Station 2 design work. Those are the two major sewer projects on this slide. The other two are smaller dollar amounts. Again, 18, we expect more activity. Now, we only had the one storm project. Again, we included this as part of our mid-year review. This is for Annapolis Creek design, and I believe we are just starting that work in 2018. So hopefully when I report back in a few months, we'll see a little more of that brown bar up here. When we look at the parks and facilities projects, we can report, hey, we did complete the 720 Prospect Building Remodel project. That's completed. And then the other project up here from McCormick Park Phase 2 is, again, on the agenda tonight for approval to move forward. So, again, we expect that project to move forward in 2018 and get completed in 2018. Lastly, we come to the transportation projects. Now, with the transportation capital projects, you can see activities in all project categories except Bay Street 3, which again, I believe we expect some work to begin in 2018. The largest of these transportation projects is the Tremont Widening Project, which is represented up there in the middle bar at $18 million worth of budget. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the Tremont project because it is largest and it's very impactful to the community. So I wanted to just throw up a couple other slides to talk about, again, how are we performing relative to our costs, how are we performing to our timetable. Thus far, The table on the left, again, this table represents the total project costs. And what you can see is thus far we have spent 31% of our project costs, and we have approximately 69 to 70% of the project costs remaining to be spent. Table on the right represents the construction project schedule. To date, we are currently about 37% of the way through our construction timeline, which is good news. It means we only have about 63% of our way to go on way. Again, what this is telling me and finance and others is that treatment is on budget and it's on schedule when you're comparing the costs and timelines. They're mirroring up very well, and we expect a lot more progress to come forth through 2018. And I would like to continue to come back to council every couple months and continue to update you all on the success of these projects. And with that, thank you, or if there's any questions.
Questions for Noah? Fred?
I think something that implicitly was successfully conveyed was that the water expenses were under, I guess, forecast. So that includes the surcharge of water that we had to purchase from Bremerton.
I would have to look at each individual line item to see which ones are over or under. But overall, I can say that the water expenditures are less than what we would have projected for the first 12 months. Yeah,
And for the next one, can you pick colors that contrast better than white and yellow?
I can. Is any favorites you like?
Anything darker than yellow.
Okay.
Other comments or questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
just
Mr.
a comment in general, especially when you look at the expense side for each of the departments. I just wanted to pass on a thank you to you and your department heads for, paying attention to the budget as, day-to-day work comes by, because that's where it really has a major impact if people aren't paying attention to their budgets. It's great to see that we're just a bit under what we anticipated, close enough for government work, but it's still better to be a little bit under the 50% mark than over. So thank
All
you.
the directors do a very good job in that area.
They do.
Mr. Diener?
So I have a question, maybe it's more for Mark. The $410,000 for water main replacement, how many feet of water main does that get us? Roughly.
I think we budget 250, no, what is it?
Well, it's 200 a year.
That's for the year.
I guess my question is that a significant chunk of water main replacement for 400,000?
No, not really.
Yeah.
But, the bigger issue is staffing, and if you did notice even though we're on budget through the year for the most part, and we do have a lot of projects that are just finally moving forward, and you're going to start seeing a lot of those yellows turn to brown. I guess and this isn't a commercial at this point, but a part of why some of those other projects aren't occurring is just simply because we're a bit overwhelmed right now.
Right.
So that's when I see that yellow, that's what I see is money out there to spend and really no time to spend it. So we haven't even really talked about water main replacement other than as association in association with the Well 9 project. We're looking at, I think, Thompson, we're looking at doing a water line that connects to the reservoir to give us some redundancy. So some of that money will go down, but it's not even hit our radar about what we're going to spend, what water main replacement projects we're going to do yet. We're doing water main repairs as we have water main breaks, and we've had a couple. And unfortunately, from a staffing level, that's really all we can manage right now.
Yeah.
Sewers probably our biggest concern in putting our efforts in to our pump stations.
I think we've got roughly 30 projects for $44 million going on in the Public Works Department right now. So there's a lot going on. So, other questions? All right, thank you, Noah.
All right, thank you.
Janine? Thank you. All right, we're to our business items this evening. The first is business item A, adoption of a resolution approving medical benefits for non-union represented executive exempt and non-exempt employees. As you know, our last council meeting, we approved an agreement for our union represented employees, and it's been our practice to then share that benefit with the non-reps. So Deb Howard's here to talk about that.
Thank you, Mayor, City Council members. AWC no longer offers Health First and Group Health $10 copay beginning January 1st, 2018. The following is a change that is recommended by the City Council to match the union contracts over a suitable alternative health insurance plan for non-union represented employees. The city has secured alternative health insurance from AWC to cover city employees called Health First 250 plan and Kaiser Permanente 200, which are very similar but not identical to Health First and Group Health $10 copay. For non-union represented executive exempt and non-exempt employees who enroll in the Kaiser Permanente 200 health care plan as of January 1st, 2018, a one-time payment into the employee's HRA VEBA account of $200 if the employee enrolls in an employee-only plan, or $400 if the employee enrolls in an employee plus spouse dependents plan to address the new health care plan deductible. For non-union represented executive exempt and non-exempt employees who enroll in the Health First 250 healthcare plan as of January 1st, 2018, a one-time payment into the employee's HRA VEBA account of $250 if the employee enrolls in an employee-only plan, or up to $750 if the employee enrolls in an employee plus spouse dependents plan to address the new health care plan deductible. For non-union represented executive exempt and non-exempt employees who enroll in the Health First 250 or Kaiser Permanente 200 healthcare plans as of January 1st, 2018, a one-time payment of $150 into the employee's HRA VEBA account to address additional medical impacts of the health insurance plan change. The Council Finance Committee recommends adoption of a resolution approving the employee medical benefits for non-union represented executive exempt and non-exempt employees to match the medical benefits reflected in the union contracts.
Or a motion? Yes, Councilmember Ashby.
Yes, I move to adopt a resolution to approve the employee medical benefits for non-union represented executive exempt and non-exempt employees to match the medical benefits reflected in the union contracts.
Seconded.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on this item?
One quick question.
Yes, Mr. Kachari.
Under bullet point 3, explain why there isn't a differentiation between the executive exempt or non-exempt employees that are don't have a spouse and children. You know, on the other two plans, there's an A and a B, and the allocation is different.
It's because if there is an employee and a spouse, it would only be $500. And then if it's an employee, spouse, and a dependent and above, it would be $750.
Right, but under 3, there isn't any difference. There's no.
For the 150?
Correct. It'd be the same. It appears it's the same whether they're married and have dependents
Yes,
or not.
it's just a one-time amount.
Yeah.
That's what we did with the union contracts.
Yeah, with this plan, again, we're trying to mimic what was done with Teamsters. Again, the first two bullets address the issue of deductibles.
Yep.
And the second, or third point, as you said, addresses the issue of out-of-pocket risk.
Okay.
And so it was a separate item when we looked at.
Risk in both categories then.
Yeah, one is the deductible of the plans themselves, and then the next, the bullet point number 3 is the out-of-pocket maximum contributions that was addressed through the Teamsters. So they're
Sure,
slightly
we're missing
different.
anything?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay. Hearing none, we'll be voting on adoption of a resolution approving medical benefits for non-union represented executive exempt and non-exempt employees. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We are on to 7B, which is adoption of a resolution approving the job description and salary scale for the Public Works Utilities Facilities Operations Manager. Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you, Your Honor, council members. The Public Works Engineering Department requested a review of the current water sewer utility manager job description and salary scale. Upon the completion of that review, it was determined that to bring the current position commensurate with the new responsibilities and to improve the city's compensation structure, a new job description and salary scale is warranted. Therefore, a new position was reviewed by the Finance Committee on March 22nd, 2018, and it was agreed that the current water sewer utility manager position be revised to the Public Works Utilities Facilities Operations Manager with job description and salary scale starting at the 1-year level, commensurate with those new responsibilities. The Finance Committee recommends approval of the adoption of Resolution 015-18, thereby approving a new job description and salary scale starting at the year 1 level, reflecting the Public Works Facilities Operations Manager position within the Public Works Engineering Department.
Councilmember Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, I move to adopt a resolution thereby approving a new job description and salary scale starting at the year 1 level, reflecting the Public Works Utility Facility Operations Manager position within Public Works Engineering Department.
Second.
Motion and a second. And Mr. Hunter is actually in the audience tonight, and he's got his good suit on, so I just want to point out that he's, Thomas has been with us a few years now, and he's doing an exceptional job for us, and I think this promotion is well deserved, and comes with some new responsibilities, and I thank you for your support in this. So, other questions? Other than Thomas's tie selection, so hearing none. We'll be voting on the adoption of a resolution approving the job description and salary scale for the Public Works Utilities Facilities Operations Manager. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We're on to 7C, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Neptune Marine LLC for the McCormick Village Park Phase 2 project, documenting procurement procedures. Mr. Dorsey?
January 26th and February 2nd, 2018, and again on February 16th and 23rd, 2018. The city's Public Works Department advertised in the Port Orchard Independent, the city's webpage, and the Daily Journal of Commerce, and uploaded the bid documents to the Washington Builders Exchange. By the March 2nd, 2018 bid due date at 3 p.m., the city received and opened 6 sealed bids for the 2018-2019 McCormick Village Park Phase 2 construction project. On March 6, 2018, the bid results were protested based upon the value of the bids being in excess of $1 million, and that the city's contract documents did not specifically request a subcontractors list pursuant to RCW 3930. Therefore, the city's Public Works Department provided a notice of rejection of all bids for the McCormick Village Park Phase 2 construction project on the city's webpage, Washington Builders Exchange, and to the listed plan holders. On March 16th, the city's Public Works Department once again advertised in the Port Orchard Independent, the city's webpage, and the Daily Journal of Commerce, and uploaded the bid documents to the Washington Builders Exchange. By the new March 30th, 2018 bid due date at 2 p.m., the city received and opened 4 sealed bids, applicable tax included, for the 2018-2019 McCormick Village Park Phase 2 construction project as follows. In general summary, the sealed bids received range from the apparent low of $1,321,031.82 to an apparent high of $1,551,446.60, with the engineer's estimate at $1,390,840. Following the completion of the city's Public Works Department MRSC mandatory bidder responsibility checklist, it was determined that Neptune Marine LLC provided the lowest responsive and qualified bid proposal of $1,321,031.82 for the 2018-2019 McCormick Village Park Phase 2 construction project. The fiscal impact, basically, we budgeted, as Finance Director Crocker showed earlier, we had $961,450 in the budget. Therefore, a budget amendment will be required. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution thereby approving a contract with Neptune Marine LLC in an amount not to exceed $1,321,031.82, applicable taxes included, for the 2018-2019 McCormick Village Park Phase 2 construction project, with the hope to commence that project in May of 2018.
Councilmember Diener?
Mr. Mayor, I'm excited to move to adopt a resolution thereby approving a contract with Neptune Marine LLC in an amount not to exceed $1,321,031.82, applicable taxes included, for the 2018-2019 McCormick Village Park Phase 2 construction project.
Second.
For a motion and a second, just a couple of additional items on the dais tonight. I placed the breakdown for your review. You've got a magnifying glass, so you can read that, of all of the park costs related to the bids. And then on the screen and then on the easel, we also have an overview of, there's more to the park, but that's the intents developed with the 2 dog parks, the play areas, the spray feature. And then addressing the budget, as you can see, we're about $400,000 short. And our plan is to tap our REAP funding, which I believe is about 1.2 million right now. Mr. Crocker, pretty close to that?
Yes.
And ultimately, that's where the money's going to come from. But we have the Tremont project, has some bond. We have the contingency money there that were for $1 million. That's part of our bond financing that has a spend down requirement that has a very tight time frame to it. So we've spent about $100,000 of that. The plan is we're going to access that bond funding now and spend that down. And then in the retreat, during the retreat process, the staff and I will come with some ideas on what we can potentially spend that $1 million on if we don't need it for Tremont, and then we'll take that money back out of REIT to pay this $400,000 back, because I think the desire was that all of the bond proceeds would go to a street project. Hopefully, we don't need them, but I'm hopeful that we're going to have $750,000 to $900,000 left over to spend on another project somewhere. And just from a cash flow timing, this makes sense to spend this money this way, and then we will replace that money from the refunds at a later date. So I hope that wasn't too complex. So, Councilmember Ashby?
Yeah, I just had a question, and I had 2 questions. Now I have one, because you answered the financial question that I was concerned with. And I do appreciate the fact that there's a plan for the $400,000. Neptune Marine, they did our DeKalb Pier, if I'm remembering correctly.
Correct.
And when I looked at their list of jobs that they've done, most of them are in the water type jobs. They're piers or I don't know. They're just and they're boat ramps, they're pilings, or that sort of stuff. So I was just wondering our confidence in them doing a park.
Right. So, so Neptune Marine does do construction of floats, piers, bulkheads, and so in this particular project, you actually have a bridge and a wetland type boardwalk. You also have, the spray park, and it's just concrete, and they're going to be subbing out the dirt work portion. They'll be, and with many of these parks and facilities, they're erecting, fabricated or prefabricated structures. So, even though they do a lot of waterfront work on the DeKalb Pier in Phase 1, they actually did the upland.
Okay.
They did the seawall and all that work. So, pipes are pipe, concrete's concrete. And, you know, for the major dirt work, yes, they're not set up, but, you know, they're subbing that type of work out.
And I do appreciate that we've had very successful projects with them in the past.
Right, we have one issue, but that quite honestly on the DeKalb Pier is actually an issue with not Neptune who just installed the floats, but it was with the design and the fabrication of the floats. And, you know, I got an email today, they have a proposed fix, you know, they're still under the warranty period. And, you know, that's between them and their float manufacturer. It's not a Neptune issue, so.
Is that the rub rails that you're talking about?
It's the whalers, yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, and again, that was, you know, the design that we had left the actual design of the floats up to, you know, the contractor, and they're the same contractor that designed the boat ramp float. They just used a different attachment method between the two, and they shouldn't have, and the proposed fix is to modify to take it to what they had designed before, so. But again, that's not a quality contractor issue. We've worked well with Neptune Marine.
And there's a 2-year warranty on this work as well.
Yeah, there's 2-year warranty. And they're honoring that.
Other questions or comments?
No, I just wanted to make a comment that when I saw it, 120-day construction period, it's very exciting for this city, you know, on this project and getting this one going.
It's 120 working days.
Working days, yep. But it's still very aggressive.
This is very
Yeah,
exciting.
we're trying to work around windows with the stream, Anderson Creek, and
At completion, this will be our first regional park, so this is a very exciting moment for us. All right, with that, you'll be voting on adoption of a resolution approving a contract with Neptune Marine LLC for the McCormick Village Park Phase 2 project and documenting procurement procedures. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We are on to item 7D, adoption of a resolution approving a contract with JMG Constructors LLC for the Well Number 9 Water Quality Retrofit Project and documenting procurement procedures. Mr. Dorsey.
thank you again. This is a similar kind of staff report because we had a similar kind of experience. On January 19th and 26th, 2018, and again on February 16th and 23rd, 2018, upon receiving approval from the Washington State Department of Health, the city's Public Works Department advertised in the Port Orchard Independent, the city's webpage, and the Daily Journal of Commerce, and uploaded the bid documents to the Washington's Builders Exchange by the March 2nd, 2018 bid due date at 2 p.m. The city received and opened 12 sealed bids for the 2018-2019 Well Number 9 Water Quality Retrofit Project construction phase. On March 6th, 2018, given the bid opening results for a similar project, which is the McCormick project, were protested based upon the value of bids being in excess of $1 million and that the city's contract documents did not specifically request a subcontractors list pursuant to RCW 3930. The city's Public Works provided a notice of rejection to all bids for the Well 9 Water Quality Retrofit Project on the city's webpage, on the Builders Exchange, and to the plan holders list for the project. On March 7th, 2018, the city did receive a bid rejection protest letter by Award Construction, which was subsequently reviewed by the city attorney and MRSC and responded to on March 8th with a denial. Therefore, on March 16th, 2018, the city's Public Works Department once again advertised in the Port Orchard Independent, the city's webpage, and the Daily Journal of Commerce, and uploaded again to the Builders Exchange. By the new March 30th, 2018 bid due date at 1 p.m., the city received and opened 2 sealed bids, applicable tax included, for the 2018-2019 Well 9 Water Quality Retrofit Project construction phase. In general summary, the sealed bids received range from an apparent low of $1,838,252.30 to the apparent high of $1,882,693.78, with the engineer's estimate at $1,570,581. The primary difference between the engineer's estimate and those bids was an addendum that changed the fencing to a much higher security fence think that was a couple $100,000. So we didn't update the engineer's estimate reflected in here, but theoretically we did. Following the completion of the city's Public Works Department MRSC mandatory bidder responsibility checklist, it was determined that JMG, who did our decant facility, provided the lowest responsive and qualified bid proposal of $1,838,252.30 for the 2018-2019 Well 9 Water Quality Retrofit Project. And again, in the funding for the Water Sewer Utility Fund, we budgeted at $1.6 million. That was in yellow, and it'll soon be creeping into brown, and a budget amendment will be required. Staff recommends that the City Council adopt a resolution thereby approving a contract with JMG Constructors LLC in an amount not to exceed $1,838,252.30, including tax for the 2018-2019 Well 9 Water Quality Retrofit Project.
Councilmember Lucarelli?
I move to adopt a resolution thereby approving a contract with JMG Contractors LLC in an amount not to exceed $1,838,252.30, taxes included, for the 2018-2019 Well Number 9 Water Quality Retrofit Project.
Second.
A motion and a second. And then as far as that budget amendment, we have adequate reserves in the water fund to cover that $250,000. And as you saw in the graph, we're running a couple percent ahead of plan in the revenue side, so we can afford to cover this. So and get the better quality fencing. Any questions for Mr. Dorsey? Yes, Mr. Chang.
Why do you think there were just 2 bids instead of 12? Did 10 find that they were overbidding, or?
No, there's generally, once you've exposed yourself, a lot of times they don't want to, I see it as an opportunity to sharpen your pencil, but other contractors see that as they're not going to bother because their hands, it's like playing poker, and their hands are exposed, and so that's really the bottom line. I think the end result for both McCormick and Well 9 is we actually got better bids the second time around. Our Tremont project was an absolute benefit of the Silverdale and the Gig Harbor job that bid the week before, so that all those number 2, 3, and 4 bidders sharpened their pencils for our Tremont project. So from our perspective, it works out for the people that had to bid twice and didn't get it both times. They're not too happy, but I'm here representing the city and not them, so, but that's the reason. They've exposed their hand, and they don't really want to, even though the sealed bids, the details aren't provided, just the general numbers, they still didn't want to resubmit, so.
Were the 2 part of the 12, the original
Yeah.
12? Okay.
Yeah.
So they were probably on the lower end?
I didn't go back and match it to see. I think JMG the first time around was kind of mid-range, so they went back and they wanted it. They worked with the city on the decant facility. We had a good relationship with them on that. Now that they knew what everybody's bids were, they could have found a different location to dispose of spoils, or they found a way to get into the range where they were more competitive.
Other questions for Mark? Yes, Councilmember Lucarelli.
I imagine this is going to happen again as far as what we're going out and not having the subcontractor list. That's been taken care of, so that won't happen.
Right. No, that was and it was actually, the city's never had a project that was over $1 million other than Tremont, but they have to provide the subcontractors list as part of the federal documentation. This is the first time the city used our standard contract form, and we had that. And we actually had kind of some disagreements on whether it was a contractor. Award Construction argued that, no, it's the contractor's responsibility. Ultimately, MRSC came back and said, no, this is like prevailing wage. You can't just say you have to pay prevailing wage. You actually have to provide a link to the webpage, or actually provide the current prevailing wage numbers. So they, again, there was kind of the discrepancy on whether we were in the wrong or not, and MRSC said, well, we think you should have been more conservative, and therefore you should reject bids just to be, careful. But we now have that language in our contract form.
So it won't happen again.
Yep, no.
Great.
So to answer your question, this is fairly new to us.
Right.
Doing work
Right.
over $1 million, and our process didn't capture this, and going forward it will.
Great.
Yes, Councilmember Ashby.
I'm just very pleased that we are finally able to have a solution for the water quality of Well 9.
Yes.
So I'm real anxious, as Councilmember Rose Pepe said on the park, I'm real anxious for us to get going on this so that we can eliminate the problems we've had out there.
Everybody should know that we have an aesthetics issue there with the manganese. So, and one of the side benefits to this too is we're getting a public restroom there built at the same time at Van Zee Park. So, a nice park improvement also. So, other questions? Okay, hearing none, you'll be voting on adoption of a resolution approving a contract with JMG Constructors LLC for the Well 9 water quality retrofit project and documenting procurement procedures. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. We are to item 7E, approval of the March 20th, 2018 council work study minutes.
Mr. Mayor, I would move to approve the work study minutes from the meeting of March 20th as presented.
Second.
A motion and a second. I believe I'll have an abstention from Mr. Diener. So all in favor of approving those, are you two?
Yes.
Okay, I missed you, sorry.
No,
And
wasn't
Mr.
The minutes, I'm still going to abstain.
All right, so all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And 2 abstentions.
Correct.
All right, we are to 7F. The discussion or possible action on a ban on retail puppies and kittens from mill breeders. Mr. Bond.
Thank you. The city has been made aware that a significant number of puppies and kittens sold at pet shops come from large-scale commercial breeding facilities where the health and welfare of the animals is not adequately provided for. The documented abuses endemic to puppy and kitten mills include overbreeding, inbreeding, minimal to non-existent veterinary care, lack of adequate and nutritious food, water, and shelter, lack of socialization, lack of adequate space, and lack of adequate exercise. The conditions in puppy and kitten mill facilities lead to health and behavioral issues in the animals bred in those facilities, which many customers are unaware of when purchasing animals from pet shops, due both to a lack of education on the issue and to misleading tactics of pet shops in some cases. These health and behavioral issues, which may not present themselves until sometime after the purchase of the animals and can impose exorbitant financial and emotional costs on customers. The cities of Bremerton, Bainbridge Island, and Paulsbo have recently passed ordinances prohibiting the retail sale of dogs and cats other than those sourced from animal welfare organizations. Port Orchard has received a request to pass an ordinance prohibiting the sale of animals bred in puppy and kitten mills. While no stores in Port Orchard currently sell puppies or kittens from mills, the ordinance will ensure that the sale of puppies and kittens from mills does not occur in the future. The ordinance will not affect a consumer's ability to obtain cats and dogs directly from an animal welfare organization or from a breeder where the consumer can see directly the conditions in which the cats and dogs are bred. At the direction of the Land Use Committee, the city attorney drafted an ordinance similar to those adopted by Bremerton, Paulsbo, and Bainbridge Island for consideration. The draft ordinance was reviewed at the March 20th Council Work Study session. At the work study meeting, the council members requested several revisions to the proposed language, and the city attorney prepared a replacement ordinances. Both of these documents are in your packet tonight. The changes would remove the requirements that pet stores offer for sale only pets that have been sourced from an animal welfare organization, that puppies and kittens for sale be at least 8 weeks old, and that the pet store shall maintain records on the source of animals sold at the store. Instead, the replacement ordinance would simply prohibit the sale of puppies and kittens supplied by puppy or kitten mills as defined therein. Staff recommends that the City Council discuss the draft ordinance and the next steps.
Thank you, Mr. Bond. We want to start the discussion.
I'll jump in. boy, given this a lot of thought over the last 4 to 6 weeks after a lot of testimony and learning a lot about this. And I'm trying to put it in context, keep emotion out of it, and put things into perspective. And right now, we don't have any pet sales or pet stores that are selling puppy mill puppies, right? I'm totally in favor of banning puppy mill puppies, no question about it. The question I was asking myself over the last couple of weeks is, how wide do we want to cast this net? I mean, if we cast a net, what if there was a legitimate breeder, such as some of the people that gave testimony here tonight, that wanted to have a pet store? Should we, preclude somebody from doing that? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. But you go back to the same thing. We don't have any breeders currently right now that are legitimate and well-respected that are wanting to sell their cats and dogs in these very same pet stores. So it's really a non-issue. And so I would be comfortable. I don't believe there's any unintended consequences of go ahead and going back to that original language that precludes the sale of anything except from these animal welfare organizations. And if we then in the future receive testimony from some of these well-respected licensed breeders that come and provide us other testimony that there might be reasons why we should revisit it, then I think we'd revisit at that point. But I think at the end of the day, to protect the downside risk of the puppy mills and some of the issues that it creates, I'd be comfortable today go ahead and tightening the ordinance, because there isn't any other issue. There's no one being impacted by it, because nowhere in the city is it occurring right now. And so if the issue again arises in the future, then I think I would listen to that testimony, have more information, more facts, and be able to make a decision based on that.
I would like to address this, and I think almost all of us are pet owners, including staff, and it is an emotional issue. What you're asking us to do in the way of only allowing pet stores to sell animals that come through a welfare organization of animal concerns, I'm wondering what guarantee is that whoever's leading some of these organizations would also have the motivations that we all have towards our animals. I don't know who hasn't rescued an animal. I mean, I've rescued many. I've put spent thousands of dollars rescuing animals, keeping them alive. And I think most of us here have that kind of heart for animals. I think what I feel comfortable with in the city is putting a ban on puppies and kittens being sold in pet stores that have come from these puppy mills, these kitten mills. No matter what, we don't have a guarantee that breeders even are going to be doing the right thing with their animals. We don't have a guarantee, because human nature is such that there are going to be people who are just doing this for the money. And there's no way of really controlling that. We here are supposed to be responsible for what happens in our city, and we're proud to say that we don't have any pet stores selling these kinds of animals. And we will be vigilant to watch for that. But the education, I think, in our area, in Kitsap County in particular, has been tremendous in having all of us be aware of how wonderful it is to rescue animals. I think most of us are doing that. Government can be too far-reaching, and we have to be careful because there are unintended consequences, and I don't believe that what's being proposed will take care of the issue the way you want it to. I think our responsibility is in our city to watch that animals are not being sold from these kinds of breeders. And I think that the revised wording does take care of that. So Council, I'm proposing that we go ahead and move forward and with the proposal, with the replacement ordinance amending certain sections of Title VII of the Port Orchard Municipal Code to prohibit the sale of dogs and cats obtained from puppy mills and kitten mills, providing for sensibility and setting an effect date of, and I imagine we could move forward with that very quickly. I don't know what would work as far as the legal counsel is concerned, but I was saying maybe as soon as June 1st. I mean, depending on what the city can move forward with, what's reasonable.
Others wanting to comment?
I was intrigued by the idea that a reputable pet breeder locally would want to sell in our pet stores, and that we were precluding a reputable breeder, locally based, of course, from selling their animals in a pet store. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, well, that's like saying that we want to make it legal for people to abandon infants at the Silverdale Mall because you don't want them to have to take it to a hospital or a fire station. We want to make it more convenient for people to convey animals that there isn't any provenance on. And what worried me most is that when you have a reputable breeder, you are checking out who is adopting your animal. You're making sure they have a fenced yard, and you are guaranteeing to take it back in case it doesn't work out. There's none of these safeguards when you're purchasing through a pet store. What's also interesting is that if you were to raise your animals in Missouri and talk to someone here and someone said, well, we're not going to let you sell it because you're in a puppy mill, this commercial breeder, who, as we know, has a USD license of dubious value, would say, well, I'm not a puppy mill. It's not something they would admit to being. So you'd have someone selling or purporting to sell animals raised in very substandard conditions at a profit, at a distance, weaned too early, and we've heard about the emotional and the financial consequences. Now, it's great that in some cases someone's saying that, there's personal responsibility. I think that's wonderful, but that means that you have a great deal of trust in the product that you're receiving, and you are getting an accurate paper. So I don't think this works at all. I'm actually most comfortable going back to the original version of the sales ordinance that I think Sean is suggesting as well.
I know I don't have a vote in this issue, but I think one of the things I believe that I've learned in this process is that most of these irresponsible breeders are out of state. And what if there was a compromise that we've got this, our ordinance that we've beefed up a little bit, if we added language that bans the sale of an animal sourced from out of state. I'm just
Sourced
throwing out
from out of state?
From out of state. I'm just tossing an idea out. So,
I would just go back to my earlier comments. It was, again, we could sit here and debate all these little details, but just pulling it back into our backyard, into our city of Port Orchard, we have witnessed a lot of testimony, some of it I believe to be expert testimony. And so if there is somebody that's being impacted on the other side of this, they're not here. They've said nothing, and so
But they've not
from
been noticed either.
I haven't heard from right, and we could address that. We don't have to take action tonight, but I've not heard from any breeder that's wanting to sell through a pet store. I've not heard of any other, type of group or entity that's looking to go through a pet store. And so I think that's what gives me comfort, is if we do, create a more restrictive ordinance today, if something changes in the future and there's expert testimony brought forward that we hear, I think we could always amend it. But I think right now what we're trying to do, that I think we all agree on, is to really limit this whole idea of puppy mills. And I think that gets us there the quickest. I think it's the safest. So that's my 2 cents.
Councilmember Ashby?
Well, what I would like to say is the testimony I've heard and the things I've read, and first of all, I want to get down to what our ultimate goal is. And I believe the ultimate goal is the welfare of the animals. Okay, that's the ultimate goal. So in the research I've done, when we talk about the animal control organizations, which would be like the Humane Society, and which we do have defined in our current ordinance. And then they've added the animal rescue organizations. The animal rescue organizations happen to have no licensing requirements. There are only 2 states in the nation, I think it's Nebraska and Virginia, that require the rescue organizations to be licensed. So when we go to the welfare of animals, I question the part about including animal rescue organizations because there's no license. They do not come under the USDA. They may be nonprofit, but that's an IRS tax designation. They don't have to meet any standards. So I would caution us to add intentionally a organization that we have no, that there's no certification required at all. And the state of Washington, RCW 1652.310, talks about dog breeding and the limitations of that in Washington state. And they do not allow any person or entity to have custody of any one time of 50 dogs with intact sexual organs over the age of 6 months. And then they have particular rules for those who have more than 10 dogs. So the state does not address rescue organizations either, but they do have some parameters for dog breeding. We in the city of Port Orchard do not allow commercial breeding. So to me, if the end result is the welfare of the animals, I like the idea of however we define a puppy mill or a kitty mill, to put that in there and prohibit that within the city. I'm not sure that I want to get into the realm of redefining what the state constitutes as dog breeders or any of that. So I could easily support Cindy's recommendation that we move forward with the resolution that was brought for us tonight. If we want to massage the definition of puppy mill or include language in that that said any breeder out of state, I could support that. The other thing that I also wanted to say out loud is in our definitions, the Animal Control Agency is specifically has to have a agreement with the city of Port Orchard. Our definition says it's Humane Society or an organization with which we have an agreement. So are we limiting it then just to the Kitsap Humane Society? And if that's the case, I have a hard time limiting it just to one entity that would be able to provide animals to pet stores that we do not have, I might add. I might add that whatever we're doing is fairly symbolic. So I think then if we went with animal control agencies, we would have to change that definition, because I think we would want to be able to allow organizations from perhaps King County or Pierce County or another organization to sell locally. That's what I have to say. I'm very comfortable moving forward with what we have. If we want to tighten up the definition of puppy mill and kitty mill, I'm good with that.
Others wanting to comment? Mr. Rosepepe?
I'll go ahead and comment. I think it needs to be tighter than what we have here tonight. And I like our definition of the Animal Control Authority, and having it just come from that and the other way around, saying we need to add, other county organizations such as from King County or Pierce. I'm okay with that. But I think that in number 8, we're a little bit loose on that one from our definition standpoint, and probably need to make it where we can sell it from. So that's the one where I would tighten, change the language as opposed to the definitions. That's my 2 cents.
Mr. Diener?
So first, I'd like to thank those that have come before the city and given their testimony. It's been an education for me, so I appreciate that. I'm also a dog owner, so I'm passionate about animals as well, and grew up with horses and cats and dogs and rabbits and all that. I think I lean more towards what Sean is saying. I like the idea that we perhaps modify this so that it reads that these are prohibited unless they're sourced from a welfare organization or agency or from shelters or rescues. I understand that this is perhaps viewed as symbolic, but I would also remind the council that it was noted up front that this was a level effort. It was a groundswell that this group was hoping to get enough cities and local jurisdictions to support this so that it would have some momentum with the state, so that we would see something occur with the state. So I think that's important, and would support that we move forward with what's proposed, with the idea with some amendments, and let's see how that shakes out. I do have a question about the definition 18, where it mentions puppy or kitten mills means a large-scale commercial breeding facility for dogs and or cats where profit is prioritized and health and welfare of animals is not. My question is, when does a mill become large-scale? And should we perhaps delete the words large-scale from that definition? So that's more food for thought.
Well, and I think, you know, yeah, you could almost, this definition could go away if you prohibited the sale of animals at pet stores, right? I mean, it would be a moot point. You wouldn't need that definition any longer.
That's a good point.
Because it is, and how do you prove large scale? How do you prove where profits prioritize over the well-being of an animal? I mean, that's really, really ambiguous language. And so, again, I could see us taking the more restrictive approach, and if we hear from others, even other jurisdictions, King County, you know, whatever their humane society is, if they want to come in here and sell animals, we'll have them approach us. I mean, because right now, it's not an issue, and so, you know, I'm a little bit guarded about trying to create all of these what-if statements when there is no what-if statement out there. Go ahead.
So can I offer an amendment to the language? I'm gonna do it this one.
No.
I would,
Okay, that's what I'm
what
saying.
I would recommend is someone make a motion that would have, if you're wanting to take action this evening, you would make a motion, someone would make a motion with those amendments called out in that motion.
After the motion.
In the motion, or, and then potentially from there, other amendments to that main motion. So, if you want to take a stab at it, go ahead.
I'll take a stab at it. I move that we, bear with me, please. Okay. We don't have a, okay. I'll move that we adopt the changes in language with the following amendments.
Okay.
And that would be striking definition of mill, 18, and on 8, on page 114, that we change the language to read, pet shops can only offer for sale dogs or cats that have been obtained from or in cooperation with an official animal control authority, since we have that in our definition.
You don't have,
There's a motion on the table to approve this as presented with striking 18 and amending number 8 to only allow the sale from our official animal control agency. And I heard a second.
Second.
Okay, so we have a main motion on the table. Discussion of that main motion or any other amendments?
I would urge amending the amendment to the motion. Actually,
So I would make a new, if you want to make a
New amendments.
new motion, is what I would recommend.
a motion to amend.
That'd be a motion to amend, yes.
Before I make this motion to amend, I would just like to comment that, Jay, it might be easier if we went with the original ordinance that has better language saying a pet shop may offer for sale only those dogs and cats that the pet shop has obtained from or displays in cooperation with an animal shelter or an animal rescue league. That language might be something that you may want to massage as opposed to,
So you're offering that as an amendment to number 8, that
yes,
particular language?
that language I would suggest.
Rather than to the entire ordinance, because
I'd
this,
actually go with either, but in this particular instance where, yes, I would just go with amending.
So could you
item.
read, so your amendment is to replace number 8 with the following? if you
Yes,
could read it
replacing
into the record.
the stated number 8 with what's also known as 2A on page 116, and I'll read it again. 2A is a pet shop may offer for sale only those dogs and cats that the pet shop has obtained from or displays in cooperation with an animal shelter or an animal rescue league.
Second.
A motion and a second on an amendment. Further discussion of the amendment. Hearing none, we're going to vote on the amendment to the original motion. All in favor? Do you have a comment?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do have another comment, 'cause
Okay.
I'm just, this is happening really, really quick, and I want to make sure that as we're trying to get to the means to the end, that there is other language in here that needs to be probably stricken as well. And as I'm looking at number 7 in here, I think it's going to need adjustment too, because it's speaking to written documentation.
Right, we've
Valid commercial kennel licenses, well, it's all going to be gone. So I think someone needs to take I think the theme of these comments and probably go back to vet it and remove language that is really going to be nullified. It's not going to have any context anymore.
So, Mr. Bond, you're the one that has to work with this document. Are you comfortable with us operating on the fly here, or would you prefer to clean this up?
I would defer to the attorney on this solely because I printed my packet from a different source and my numbering is different than yours. And so I'm a little bit confused on which version of the document we're actually
You're no
talking
help
about.
at all.
I
No.
would like to just speak to what, I would like to speak to
So-
Sean's comment on
Okay.
number 7.
Okay.
And number 7 is,
Interject real quick. Okay, so there's a main motion on the floor that has amendments to
18,
18 and 8.
yes.
There was an amendment to the main motion to amend some language for section 8.
I
Okay?
think we need to do.
So you
before we
have to
dive
resolve
into-
those two first before you
Let's
can move to
resolve,
other
yes,
numbers.
The amendment first, and then we can deal with.
So the
our
amendment on the floor
parliamentarian
is to
correct.
discuss,
Yes, so let's-
discuss what you want for number 8.
So number 8, we've got language right now for number 8 that has been proposed to be amended. Okay, further discussion of that amendment? Okay.
And just for the record, Councilmember Chang, can you please repeat what you want to be the new 2A? Is that correct?
Actually, the language I was proposing for item 8 on page 114 is 2A on page 116,
Okay.
verbatim.
Okay.
Okay, so the amendment, the amendment to the main motion is to change number 8 to say 2A, basically. Okay, so
Okay,
that's
so
the
it's two-
amendment.
yeah, the
So if
language
there's any
from
other
2 to
discussion
2A.
on that, then have discussion on that change.
Yes, okay.
So if everybody agrees that 2A is acceptable, then you would make a motion and then you would, or vote on that
Have a
motion.
motion and a second,
Yep.
and that's what the proposal is.
Yep.
We're going to vote on that, yes, sir.
I would like to make a friendly amendment to that amendment, if I may.
Okay, let's hear that.
So that would also include 2B, which reads, "A pet shop shall not offer for sale a dog or a cat that is younger than 8 weeks old." So that includes the entirety of number 2.
no, there's
No,
a
it doesn't.
3.
There's a 3. Oh, no, you're right. A and B.
Page 17.
Oh, no, you're right.
Right.
Number 2.
It's A and B.
Okay. So the amended motion, Councilmember Chang, are you comfortable with number 8 now reading what 2A and B would be in place of number 8?
Yes.
Okay. So that's the vote before you.
Okay. Discussion? Yeah, we're still in a discussion of the amendment.
I'm
Only
still.
of the amendment, no,
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 don't
I'm
bring
not
anything
going,
new
I'm not
up.
going to, no, I'm not going to
Okay.
bring anything new up, but I just
All right.
wanted to go back to Councilmember Ashby's comment, if I remember, if I heard it right, is that when we talk about animal rescue leagues and stuff, there is no certification or.
That is correct.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have no licensing requirements.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where I, want to be a little bit more strict on that, Fred, Councilmember Chang, than that, so I'm kind of against the amendment. Thanks.
Okay. So are you ready to vote on the, no?
I
You got a
mean-
comment?
Clarify, go ahead. Clarify what we're voting on.
Okay. So number 8, which is commercial, from reading it, correct, commercial kennels means the establishment, we're striking that in entirety and replacing it with, text, what page number is that on, Fred?
So number 8 on 114, is that what you're
Yes.
referring to?
116.
Yeah, I've got that. I've got these
Okay.
two. But we haven't defined animal shelter or animal rescue league.
Not yet.
One thing at a time.
Okay.
So, all right, we all clear? Mr. Dorsey, you don't have a vote. Do you have a question?
I know, I just wanted to add a staff comment at this point.
Okay.
I think it's inherently dangerous to write a resolution from the dais as opposed to providing information at a work study and have a red line, because you'll end up adopting something and then at the next meeting, we're gonna have to modify it because there's something that's in contradiction with something else. I think there's a lot of great juices flowing, but I think doing this at a work study is probably safer so that you have staff the opportunity to make sure you're not actually having contradictory language someplace buried in this very long document.
Yep.
That's just a staff comment.
Senior director in the room, that's not a bad advice.
I absolutely concur to that comment, and I don't know that we would necessarily have to wait to go to a work study if we have enough comments that we could provide staff and our city attorney where they could go and create that draft for a subsequent meeting. I mean, while we're pretty deep into it, I'd be fine, continuing this discussion, but I agree. I think for us to try to write an ordinance tonight, we're not gonna get it right. We're gonna be undoing it.
Could we look at sort of a straw poll and figuring out direction for this? I mean, we're not gonna be able to give clear advice unless we figure out who's got a
Which way the
more
wind's
solid
blowing?
position. What's that?
Which way the wind's blowing? Okay. I think, are we comfortable voting on this,
I
on the
think this would provide
amendment
direction.
to give direction to, and
Yes.
then maybe we table the
Yes.
overall, the main motion, once you've given staff the structure
Yes.
with all of the amendments that you want?
I think this is a
Is
key
that-
turning point.
Okay, is that a fair path? Okay, all right, so we're on this amendment, which strikes 8 and adds alternative language. Further discussion of that? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed?
Yes.
Nay, we have 2 nays, so motion carries 5-2. Okay, other changes to this document? I heard something here with,
I wanted
Breaking
to
news.
respond to what
okay,
Councilman
Please do.
Kucharty's concern was with number 7. And number 7 is not limited to cats and dogs.
Right.
And so I would not want to see us adjust that operational requirement. Because even if it comes from an animal control agency or any other animal, I mean, this does, this applies to birds and everything. So what the information, as I understand it, that's been requested of us is limited to dogs and cats.
Right, I absolutely agree. I wouldn't request that we strike this. Something that needs to be cleaned up because we're talking about commercial kennel licenses. I think were things that are specific to, whether specific to dogs and cats, I think it probably needs to be just reworked a little bit. But I agree, I'm not looking to do that. And also, if you have Kitsap Humane Society, are they going to have all of this written documentation? I don't know the answer to that. So just to make sure that, when they come down, I don't know. So where there's language applicable to cats and dogs, I think it probably needs to be cleaned up.
so what we have right now is something that bans other than the rescue. And so what I'm hearing is you would like staff, we potentially you would table this at this point and bring it back in 2 weeks. We can give Mr. Bond an opportunity to scrub this. Do you understand the direction? You understand the direction? Okay.
I think there's one more point, though, that's been brought up a couple of times. What's everyone's feelings on these rescuer? Because I'm concerned by that. If they're not licensed at all, who can call themselves a rescue? Do we need to open up that right now, or do we just limit it right now to the Kitsap Humane Society? And as other, legitimate organizations come forward, we could certainly hear that testimony. Just where you all out on that?
Mr. Rosapip?
I think our definition, Animal Control Authority, or other agency designated as Animal Control Authority and Animal Control Service Agreement,
That we have a service
that
agreement
we'd have a
with.
service agreement would cover that.
Okay.
So we wouldn't have to limit it, and we could always expand it if they came, if somebody came forward, that we could vet them. So that would be mine on that.
Could I make a suggestion on that particular point? I think that maybe a good way to do this would be to say animal service organizations as designated by resolution, and then actually have the council designate specifically those organizations which are acceptable in a separate motion, and that can be changed easily if somebody comes forward and says they would like to be able to offer their animals for adoption, and they can present their qualifications or information about their organization to you, and you can make the decision.
Mr. Clausen?
Are you expecting everyone that would want to be on that list would come to us and has to be put on that list?
Yes. Yeah, I think there's a handful of them that we know of right now that could be specifically listed, and if somebody else if some other organization is created, or if an organization from outside of Kitsap County wants to bring animals to a pet store here, it would be a very simple request and amend the resolution.
I don't think we're gonna have a list right now because we don't have any pet stores.
Well, my concern
it's
is,
not a list of-
I'm not an expert on dog rescue, cat rescues. Somebody stands before us and says, I'm a legit rescue organization, who am I to argue one way or another? That's my only concern, is we're way outside of my world of expertise.
I'm assuming the Humane Society probably already has a list, though.
Well, there's a lot of animal rescue organizations that reside outside of Kitsap County. I know my daughter has 2 golden retrievers from rescue organizations that are outside of Kitsap County. Fortunately, the dogs that she has been great, but I couldn't tell you if they were legit or not. And ironically, while we were having earlier discussions here, I just real quickly jumped onto the internet and just put in purchase Cocker Spaniels, and there's many opportunities on the internet, and ironically, one that has a very attractive older lady sitting with a bunch, or 2 or 3 puppies, comes from Missouri. So you never know, but, I don't know that we're gonna
John,
stop this kind
you
of
bring up my point in that I believe that even though there's this grassroots effort, I believe we're talking about things that are outside of the purview of the city council. I think this needs to be taken up in the state legislature. And this city has never, nor has the AWC, ever felt compelled to put it on our list of work to do. And so we have some very dedicated, passionate, concerned people that want to solve a problem. And I don't think it's that easy. If they were putting all of the energy that they've put into contacting us to our state representatives, it may be beneficial. I think, and everything that I've read is that most of the animal sales are internet sales, and the internet sales are not regulated. So it's a much bigger issue than Port Orchard. And I'm remembering we did have a pet store in town in maybe 2000, 2001, and I know we have a parrot store now. But that's all we have. So again, although someone questioned it, I believe what we're doing is symbolic. If there's a concern that farmland, because of the road widening in Silverdale, is going to seek another location, and if the intent then is to make sure they can't locate within any of the cities in town, I think we're targeting a business, and that doesn't feel right to me.
I would just add that it may be perceived as symbolic, but it's part of a strategy to show the state that a number of jurisdictions have already moved forward on this, so why shouldn't the state?
I guess my concern, and I think none of us sitting here condone puppy mills by any means, or inhumane treatment of any critter, whether it's 2-legged or 4-legged or whatever. But as I said, when we talked about having a list, we're way outside of my wheelhouse. I'm not an expert in that area, nor, I mean, we've heard certainly the side of the group here that I agree with them. But then I also heard a gentleman sitting over here that says, wait a minute, why is government getting involved in telling me where I can, you know, I should be responsible for making that determination whether the animal is one that I'm willing to take on and care for. So I'm just concerned that we're taking action here without really knowing what we're doing. I think, you know, I certainly agree that I don't want to see puppy mills promoted in any way, shape, or form. But on the other hand, I don't want to limit a person's ability to find a family pet and bring him home. You know, some of the issues that were raised here about these animals that come from puppy mills, there's no guarantee when you go to the Humane Society, when you pick one up, of what kind of treatment that dog had before it was picked up by the Humane Society. Certainly the Humane Society does a good job of medically checking the animal out and making sure that it has its shots and it's spayed and neutered and that sort of thing. But you don't have some of the guarantees that was shared here tonight that you don't have when you go to a pet store. So, I mean, I would support it for the symbolic standpoint of it, but I truly feel uncomfortable because I'm doing something that I don't really understand the ramifications of all of it. And maybe I could just finish up in Councilmember Ashby's comments about this estate. The one thing that the state does pretty well is that they bring out the experts. The experts come forward and they debate the issues in their hearings and they make decisions. So I agree that this is something way bigger than Port Orchard, way bigger than Kitsap County. I think it's something that the state should really take on, not just Washington State, but all the states. But they will be making their decisions from a position of being a little more informed and hearing one side of the issue that's very well articulated and very passionate, but it's still only one side of the issue.
So where are we at?
There's a motion on the
There's
floor.
a motion on the floor, and I believe, well, we passed the amendment. Right. And I haven't heard do we want to vote on the motion on the floor, or?
Is the motion to table it to 2 weeks when
We haven't got a motion to
Okay.
do that yet.
Right. Mr. Mayor,
That was Mr. Dorsey's recommendation, our eighth council member, Mr. Dorsey.
yes, he must be a cat owner.
Actually, I was going to bring up, I don't want to add fuel to the fire, but I just realized that over the course of my life, all the animals, dogs and cats I've had, they've all come from a box outside of Safeway. So, and they've been great animals. So are you going to regulate those as well?
So, Mr. Diener, you're about to make a motion.
So,
Table?
Can I just
Sorry.
interject? So I just want to make sure that when you make the motion, so when you make a motion to postpone to a date certain,
Yes.
that means that the main motion that is before you tonight will carry over to that date that you specify, and you will take action or vote on that main motion. The other option is that you can make a motion to table the discussion, which means all of the motions and all of the comments that you made tonight, or excuse me, all of the draft ordinances that came before you tonight would just go away. And then somebody would need to direct staff to either bring this to a work study, either bring it up at a different meeting at a different time with some other direction. So if you want to continue the discussion, continue it with the motion, or table it and we bring it up later.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion to continue tonight's discussion with direction provided to staff to April 24th.
There's a motion and a second discussion. Mr. Clausen, you were raising your hand.
I want to make sure that I understand the motion. We're suspending discussion on all this, asking staff to take it, and come back with a draft, and then we can pick up the discussion again.
And perhaps any other deficiencies that can be identified with the direction we've given so far.
Because we have motions on the table now, do we not?
We have one motion.
We have one
We have a
motion
main
that we're
motion.
not
We
taking
voted
action
on the amendment. which gave framework for staff to make adjustments to this.
I think we're all in agreement here, but I think what we've just done is we've created quite a web. I might recommend that I'll speak for myself. I would vote against the motion that's on the table, and then we could just eliminate it, and then we could have a discussion for our staff to bring something back on the 24th, but to basically kind of stop what's happened already. We've already gotten, I think, out ahead of our skis a little bit, and I think we could just end this and start over clean.
Which was option
Might be a
2
good-
that
good way to
Brandy
go.
recommended.
I would agree with Sean that I think we should take action on this motion that's before us, whether we up, down, whatever, and then create a motion directing staff to take our discussion, develop a draft, and bring it back
in 2 weeks.
Mayor?
In 2 weeks.
So
I thought we had one because I thought Councilmember Diener made that motion.
But we still have a motion on the floor that hasn't
A
been
motion on the
dealt with.
floor, and we have a motion.
Without a second.
To postpone.
We have a second.
Yeah, I
To
have a
continue it to the 24th. What's before us tonight? I'm hearing an alternative view that doesn't want to do that, so we're gonna have to take a vote on that, on this issue, whether it's tabled or it's brought back as a new action item.
Can I speak to my motion?
Yes, you may.
So I understand what you're saying. We are getting kind of ahead of our skis, and it is getting a little complex. At the same time, we need to provide some direction, or else we're going to come back in 2 weeks and be where we are tonight. So I thought that we voted up the amendments that Mr. Chang had made. So that's all that this would propagate.
I fear what we're gonna do, though, is because we're gonna have this main motion hanging there, and now we're gonna have to make another amendment in 2 weeks, and we're gonna continue this
We have
just
a
kind of
motion.
confusing process.
We have a motion that there hasn't been any action, so when we come back in 2 weeks, we'll still have that motion
And
before
we'll have
us
to amend it again. So if we could
to do
just,
something with, so we should dispense that motion.
You make a motion, I think they're correct that you should possibly make a motion to direct staff to clean this up under the premise of what's been discussed.
So we got
Wait
a
a minute, we
motion,
wouldn't
don't we
need
have
a
a
motion.
motion that's
Okay.
on the
we
floor
wouldn't need a
now?
motion.
No, not a
motion on the
No motions, okay.
So the
I'll butt out.
motion right now before you is to postpone this discussion, postpone the main motion, which is, which was made by Councilmember Rosa Pepe. That main motion would be postponed for 2 weeks.
And just so you know, I would vote against that, so we don't have to go and amend that motion in 2 weeks.
And
I
that-
would like to eliminate it, give staff direction to bring back an amended ordinance, that takes in all the discussion tonight, so we can have a fresh, clean slate. and not have all
Including
these muddy
the
waters.
action that we took on the first amended motion that
Yes.
we approved.
And that was actually Councilmember Diener.
Tabling
Yeah,
it
we can
allows
table the whole thing, too.
table the whole thing allows you to bring it back a new motion, or new resolution.
Yep.
So
This brings the discussion back to the floor where we're at right now.
Right, because the
Which is
main,
we have a motion on the floor.
So we can table everything.
So we want to table.
and just to remind you, the main
Can I have
motion,
that motion again? Yes,
Can
we
you-
have to dispense that motion.
Right.
And then we can direct staff to bring something back in 2 weeks that reflects our discussion here and the motion that we made on the amendment.
There's a
so the main motion that was made earlier by Councilmember Rosa Pepe was to not adopt the red line version of number 18. And then he also made changes to number 8, which you already made a motion and amended that number 8, so that's been resolved. But what's on the floor right now is how you're gonna resolve number 18. So if you want to, and again, there's an amendment to or there's a motion to postpone the discussion of number 18 for 2 more weeks. So when you come back in 2 weeks, if this motion before you to postpone passes in 2 weeks, the thing that's gonna be on the table is how you're going to resolve number 18. If you do not want to bring that forward, I would recommend that somebody call for the question, vote on the question, and table the discussion, vote on that, and then provide some direction to staff.
Okay. Let's follow that path.
Yeah.
Someone, you call
So
for
the
the question?
motion to postpone, oh, gotcha, yeah.
So called for the question.
Okay. Is there a second?
Is there a second on
I-
calling for the question?
Second.
By Mr. Kachardi.
Okay.
Okay, so question's been called,
So you have to vote immediately.
so, and we're voting on
End the debate,
and ending
basically.
debate on
Yep.
this issue. All in favor of ending the debate, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So the debate has been ended on this. So now.
We
here's
have to vote on the
parliamentarian.
postponement.
We vote on that amendment, or motion.
Okay, to postpone.
Yep.
Okay, we have a motion, a second to postpone. All in favor of postponing, say aye.
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 We have two. And the nays?
Aye.
Did you see a show of hands on the nays? Postpone? Okay, 5, thank you. So fails, postponement fails 5-2. Okay. Mr. Clausen?
Mr. Mayor, I guess I would ask the council, we have that one issue still hanging fire, and that was, what was it?
Number 18.
Number 18,
So you can
thank
just,
It would be nice if we could take action on it, because at least then we would be giving staff our position on that particular aspect of it.
Okay. So what is the motion on the floor? We have a main motion on the floor. We don't have any amendments currently.
correct. So the main motion that would be before you, so your options are to vote on the main motion, which is to not vote in number 18, because I believe that was Councilmember
Yes,
Rosa
to
Pepe's
strike it.
option, was to
That's right.
to
Right,
not
number
include
18.
it. Or you can table discussion, but
Definition.
It was
18 on
struck.
page
Definition
112.
18.
The puppy.
Striking,
Okay.
striking that.
To add clarity, I will vote against it, because I don't want to make just one little tweak here. This would eliminate what just occurred here tonight, and we can give staff a fresh start. And so I will be voting against the main motion.
I concur as well.
Fully expecting, we're going to see it again in 2 weeks, but
Yes.
a much more comprehensive, well-thought-out piece of document will come before us.
All right. So we're voting on the main motion at this time.
Well,
Oh, Mr.
I have more
Clausen?
discussion.
Okay, more discussion. I'm all for it.
Sean, what is it about 18 that
It's
you
not
don't like?
18, it's the main motion in entirety, which includes striking 18.
Right.
It's not an amendment, it's the whole motion, it's the whole
The
ordinance.
whole motion is to strike 18.
No, it is not. The motion on
What
the
is the
floor.
motion?
The motion on the floor is to approve this ordinance, which,
he only said to strike 18.
and then we also had an amendment, and then
Number
there's other.
8,
and
which
then
we've
there was other
adjusted.
things that were brought forward
Yep.
that we wanted, that there was desire to clean up.
I thought that's what we voted on, that amendment that brought the other stuff that was brought forward.
Only to number 8, I believe it is.
I'm really confused, because how could we
Yeah.
amend something without a motion to approve a?
We amended 8.
Correct.
With Fred's language.
Okay.
That was
so
the,
back to
that
the-
was the,
Okay.
that was the.
That's next.
That was the
That
second piece
happened.
of Rosa Pepe.
That one happened.
Yes.
That's the only thing that's happened, and now we have a main motion.
Which is to approve minus this.
Yes, but,
then I'm
but
voting against
Mr.
it as well.
Mr. Kachardi has voiced a concern. There's other cleanup throughout this document that needs to happen. And if we approve this as written, that cleanup won't happen.
Right.
Agreed.
Okay, that's what I heard.
Second, what,
Withdrew his motion?
what other cleanup besides number 7 did you have in mind?
Well, I think everything we've debated tonight, right? I don't think we can answer that question. I think we
Right.
need more additional feedback from staff and attorneys, like the
Rescue.
the rescue, the definition, these non-licensed. I think there's other sections in here that make reference to dogs and cats, that if we end up eliminating altogether the ability for someone to sell a dog and a cat at a pet store, that there's other language in here that will have to be amended as well as a result.
So it sends it back to staff.
I think what I'm trying to do is
go through.
erase all of the action that's happened here tonight, these motions, so we can, basically direct staff to come back with what they've heard tonight and bring us back a more comprehensive edit, so we're not piecemealing this.
I guess what I would just interject is, having read this several times, I don't know what else you're going to clean up, other than perhaps provide a definition for animal rescue. And as, because that was in the motion, Fred's motion that was passed. Is that correct?
Correct.
Well, I remember, Sean, in your comment, maybe I got focused too much on, you indicated you're concerned with large scale.
Right.
Your
That would
biggest
go
concern
away.
with that particular one, just the large scale size of it.
Well, that whole section goes away.
Okay, so you're concerned with having that whole thing go away, not just the large scale?
No, I think the whole thing would go away if we're not gonna allow the sale of dogs and cats. And I still question, and I'm not the expert here, but I still question number 7.
So, may I interject again? I apologize, but when the motion to call for the question technically ends all debate. So, at this point, if you want to proceed with calling for the question in the debate, make the motion on the main
See, we
motion.
did- So. I-
Or
I-
somebody
I was
make a
under the
motion,
impression
or
that
somebody
was
can make a
only-
motion to table it.
That was only my understanding to whether to table it or not.
Mine also.
And so we were back, which brought us back to the main motion. Right.
Okay.
So, we're to the main motion, and it's whether we want to approve this main motion or not with the one amendment that Mr. Shang made. Are we prepared to vote on that? Okay. All in favor of the main motion, say, so let's show of hands here. Raise your hand and say aye. Okay. Those not in favor, say nay. Raise your hand.
Nay.
So all 7 of you then. So 7-0, we didn't approve anything. And now, what I've heard here from this last hour is that Mr. Bond is going to clean this up and bring it back in 2 weeks.
It would be my preference that it not be brought back in 2 weeks at a council meeting. I think it needs to go to a work study, or we're going to be in the same place that we are tonight, and we're going to be
You want it at
debating.
next week's work study? Can you get it done into next Tuesday? Okay, I'm getting thumbs up. So next week's work study, and then with the
Yes.
intent to bring it back for
Yes.
action the following week.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, work study's gotten kind of full, but we'll get it done. All right.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to thank members of the audience for sticking with us and seeing how this messy parliamentary procedure works. We get tripped up sometimes, and so thank you for your patience with the city council.
We easily dispensed of $2 million worth of projects, but could not deal with puppy mills this evening. So, all right, we are to item G, which is discussion of the retreat agenda, and that's just, I think it's a pretty good, Sophie and I have been working on a document there. It's got the current agenda, and we'd like to take a 5-minute break? No? We're good?
No, I just have some personal things. to
Okay,
change.
okay, perfect. Council, we've got the council work study coming up, and Sophie's got an exercise that leads the event off. I think it's a pretty good exercise, and that'll kind of set the table for the rest of the day. And so we've got an agenda set there, and I just wanted you guys to see that before you showed up on the 18th.
Would it be advisable for us to also bring our comprehensive plans for that? I know that there's.
This exercise has that element in it that was the concern. So we will bring that.
Yeah, okay, good. 'Cause
Yeah,
there's some
part of that exercise.
Yeah, there's specific goals and policies that aren't captured specifically in the implementation chapter, but in the comp plan.
I don't think the intent of the work study is to rewrite the comp plan.
No, I hope not.
Okay. All right, with that, that's what, we'll publish this as the agenda. That's the exercise we're gonna do, and we'll move forward from that. We've got, Mr. Clausen brought forward an item, business item. We call it Birds on the Waterfront, but as I thought about it, I used to manage a bank out towards the freeway, and seagulls were a problem out there too, so maybe this is bigger than that. So, Mr. Clausen, your concern?
Yeah, it was actually a concern that was brought to my attention. We've discussed it here before. It has to do with a problem that's occurring. I was only aware of it in particular down kind of the east end of the pedestrian path there around West Bay Shopping Center where there are occasionally folks coming down with multiple bags of bread and creating flocks of seagulls when they're feeding them. And unfortunately, when you have a flock of seagulls, you have a lot of seagull droppings all over the vehicles and the walkways and everything else.
They're like McDonald's French fries too. That was the neighbor of
And
business I
Cheetos.
managed.
The Cheeto lady always
Is that right?
comes every day.
Yeah, so it's been brought to my attention on more than one occasion that it is really a concern and a problem for the folks down in that particular area of town. It's a concern for, I think, some of the businesses that are in the shopping center, and their customers come out to find their cars have definitely need to go up to the car wash. So they've asked me to bring it forward once again and see if we would be willing to go forward with installing signs. That's all they're asking for is signs.
We
They're
have to
not-
pass an ordinance,
Well,
which we drafted previously and then we pulled. So we have the signs designed.
Don't need to hire 4 more police officers to go down and enforce it. They'll pretty much point out the signs to some of the offending folks who routinely go down there. I suppose it could
Says, please do not feed the
result in
birds."
something
I
bigger.
think we do. Because the sign references the code.
We brought a draft graphic that had a seagull on it that I designed. And
Very
it
nice.
had language about don't feed the birds, pursuant to RCW, whatever, or POMC. So we have language in a red line already
Hope you didn't
prepared.
delete that file.
No, we still have it.
So anyway, I committed to bringing it back up for
Do
our
you want
discussion once again.
that in a work study first?
Does
You
it
wanna
need to
kinda
go to
track-
work study?
Do we need to study
Okay.
this, or?
I'm
We need an
asking.
animal
We
control
fa-
expert.
we failed
If
tonight.
we're gonna study it, I would suggest we convene down at West Bay. you know,
Okay, so would
Get a
you?
first-hand look.
Are we limiting it to West Bay?
No,
No.
I think it should be citywide.
It's
Well-
along the waterfront.
So does this mean we're telling them not to have the seagull calling contest anymore?
I think you could put an exception into that ordinance for,
I thought we did, build
Yeah.
an exception.
I think it did too.
No, it didn't.
Punishment if you do?
Well, you're not
have to
actually,
stand there while the birds are flying.
You have to get pooped on?
sign said about feeding the birds. I think with a seagull calling, you're not feeding them, you're enticing them.
And I think you're beating. But I think we had language in it. Can we bring it back in 2 weeks? Is that soon enough?
If the council, I don't wanna bring it back if the council is opposed to it.
Do we need a motion?
Aren't we
That I
really
would bring
just talking about putting up signs?
We are, but we need an ordinance with the code. The signs have the reference to the code that it's not allowed. It's like camping in the parks. We have to have something, otherwise we can't enforce it.
Right, but what if we didn't want to enforce it? What if the first step is we just put up a sign that says, please do not feed the birds, and these business owners can point to the sign?
Yeah,
We're not
that's, I
going to
think,
enforce
what
it anyway,
they're,
we wouldn't
Yeah.
need an
they're
ordinance.
hoping
It's
to be
just
able to
simply,
do
please
is
don't feed the birds.
just point to the sign and.
Why can't they put up their own signs? Why do
Because
they
there's no
need for us
enforcement.
to put up signs for them?
Well, where would they put it up?
Well, it wouldn't be legal or
On-
binding.
A right of way.
It would be in our right of way.
See, if we put up a sign that says contrary to, Portage Municipal Code, whatever, there's an appearance of teeth behind the rule.
It's just more
Whereas I
work
just
for
put up
code
mine
enforcement.
Off the printer, piece of paper, it's not gonna carry much weight.
It's already prepared. Just bring it back in 2 weeks and, yeah, dust it off.
I'd rather have code to back up the sign.
I agree.
Yeah, no, we had an ordinance, I think it was 9 point something in the municipal code.
All right, we'll be back in 2 weeks.
Thank you.
Okay, let's get on to our committee reports, I think, is our next item here. Isn't it? I lost my way here.
Citizen comments.
That's out after, so
Council
we're
committees.
committee reports.
Oh, yeah.
Finance Committee.
The 24th.
Yep, it's coming up. I'll be out of town, but you guys can meet without me.
Good way to spend money.
Good. All right. Good luck at getting the projects done, as we saw. Economic development, tourism. We met this week, I
Yeah,
believe.
we met yesterday, as a matter of fact, and Patty Groff Hoke from the Visit Kitsap Peninsula gave us a presentation of the work they do, and she gave us information regarding the economic impact of tourism on the region. She described their marketing campaign and their focus, and what they're focusing on right now is promoting the Kitsap Peninsula as a getaway. And are you agreeing that's what
Yes,
she
I-
said?
yeah, I
As a
think it's the next
getaway,
one,
and she's focusing her marketing efforts just in the Pacific Northwest. She's not taking it out of state because of that's her decision, and she markets very heavily in the King County, Snohomish, and Pierce County areas. She also offered several ideas on how Port Orchard's events and businesses can take advantage of their services. And we actually, when she got done talking, we had several takeaways that we could take action on, so we were very pleased with that. The data that she provided shows consistent revenue from our lodging. Port Orchard has basically two primary motels with 117 beds, and their occupancy and room rates have remained stable over the last several years, and it shows that in their revenue. The revenue doesn't vary much year to year. The revenue from our food and beverage industry, however, continues to increase year after year. And as a sector, the food and beverage industry is quite significant for Port Orchard. And that's in it. We have more restaurants now, and the tourism activity we do, they seem to go in and buy food or beverage. In fact, we saw, according to the numbers she had, about $1 million increase from 16 to 17. So that's nice to know.
Not in revenue, but in
Not
gross sales.
in sales, not in revenue, but in retail sales. Yeah, that's the only information she has access to. Yeah, and then we spent the bulk of our meeting talking about our Port Orchard's tourism process that we have right now. And Brandy reviewed the tourism strategic plan that we approved last year. She's updating that, the charts in it with current information. We talked about the banner that we hang across Bay Street, the process on that, and she's bringing through a couple of changes that we'll look at. I can't remember if it was work study or just at a meeting, but
I plan on bringing it forward at the first meeting in May.
okay, because we have a situation where we have people lining up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get their reservations in, and we think maybe we can do that a little more efficiently.
Online?
No, but I was concerned we had a protest going on when I showed up to work, and everybody
Was
hanging
out
out
there.
by the front door.
Yeah, and she also had some updates to our special events toolkit. She talked about the makeup of our LTAC committee, and also she's moving forward with the schedule for our summer foot ferry and getting that process, negotiating with Kitsap Harbor Tours and taking care of that. And then Nick led a discussion regarding activity in mini storage requests, and that matter will be brought forward to a work study.
All right. Utility Committee,
We're meeting next Monday, 9:30 a.m. here at City Hall.
Sewer Advisory,
That's next Wednesday, and that's going to be at the sewer plant, 1165 Beach Drive.
okay. I don't believe land use met.
No, we did not. Lack of business, but we are scheduled to meet May 7th at 7:30 at DCD.
7:30. 7:30. Okay.
And lodging tax has not met. Anything new on Festival of Chimes and Lights?
Yes, we're meeting next Monday, 3:30 here at City Hall.
Okay, and we discussed earlier the council retreat. I'll tackle one thing I have for transit in my mayor's report. Do you have anything for KRCC you want to report?
I'm trying to think what at our last meeting, we approved or put forward the recommendations for the regional transportation plans. It would be, that competition is regionally at PSRC. And again, we're working primarily on that transportation competition. Yeah, that's what we've been focusing on, John.
We also allocated out the
Oh, yes.
funds that were
Yes.
returned.
The return funds, which we
Yes.
didn't have any projects on the contingency list. so
Yeah, and
we didn't
that
get it.
was, that gave me a little bit of pause, because it was only 2 or 3 years ago we had returned funds that were allocated to the contingency list. And last week, we had $1.6 million that went down this contingency list. So Port Orchard had no items on that list because our big ask was for Tremont, and now it's funded. And so these other, anyway, I guess my takeaway from that is we need to ask for more projects so that we can have something on the contingency.
Be on all the lists.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I guess that comes with a caveat, because you need to make sure that you don't have a project on the list that you've already gotten some funding for.
Right.
Because now the clock's ticking.
Right, right.
So we cleared down 5 projects, or we have 2 left. So the planning dollars are the safe way to go on that. But at the end of the day, those people that are on that contingency list are,
The time is,
they're kind of up the creek unless they get their projects funded. Otherwise, they're paying money back. So it's a double-edged sword.
On to the mayor's report. Hopefully you guys got an email and read it about PSRC's annual meeting, May 31st. I know Beck and I will be in attendance. I encourage others to come. It's over in Seattle, and it's a good meeting to go to. It's at 11:30 to 1:30 on May 31st, and the city will gladly pay for your registration, so reach out to Brandy on that one. Also, the Association of Washington Cities is having its annual conference. Beck and I already have our hotel rooms reserved. You're going?
yes, my hotel is reserved, but I'm having a personal conflict with the dates.
My goodness.
So.
So it's June 26th to 29th, and I was hoping to get a bunch of you there in support of my election onto the board. So I'm one of 2 candidates for a
In
board
Yakima?
seat. In Yakima. So, June 26th to 29th.
26 is a council meeting.
I know that. So in the past, I've gone Wednesday morning.
I see.
So that's possible, because the conference really starts, there's a welcome reception on Tuesday. So it is possible to go Wednesday through
Can I
Friday.
give a plug?
Yeah.
I have gone every year that I've been on council, and this year I'm suspecting I'm going to have a personal conflict, but I have found it very valuable. The sessions they have are excellent, and it's been worth, the one that was in Spokane, I was up early after the council meeting to drive over, but I have always felt that it's been 2 or 3 days well spent.
2 years ago, one of my sessions was where I found the vendor for our website. And, it saves us thousands of dollars in website development. So there's a lot of good information, because surprisingly, a lot of cities out there have the same challenges and issues that we have. And you get a chance to speak to those folks, other city council members. So encourage you to go. We'd love to have you guys there. Jerry asked last meeting about Kitsap Street zoning mixed use, and it is zoned mixed use on the north side from Sydney to Prospect, but that was done as part of the DOD, those few parcels there. So it wasn't anything to do with our design standards, sorry, I didn't know that off the top of my head, but when we researched that was the case. So I just wanted to answer your question. I was on the bylaw change for transit, and one of the changes is that there's a set procedure for the rotation of the at-large seat, which is a 2-year appointment. In January, we will have that appointment, so be thinking about that. Love to have one of you. Mr. Clausen's not eligible to be a board member on that board, so, and I'm already, so and if we don't accept that,
Oh, we'll accept it.
okay.
We'll accept it.
Okay, all right.
We'll
And
fight
then-
over accepting that one.
Okay, and also, is it true, currently is it a change that I'm allowed to have an alternate? Or,
Well, you can have an alternate now.
okay, so currently, we have the ability for me to have an alternate too. I don't miss many meetings, I'm gonna miss one this next month. So if somebody wanted to be my alternate, you know, you could raise your hand and you're.
Raise your hand, Jay.
I did.
So, okay,
Okay.
so Jay's willing to do that.
That'd be good.
You guys do need to, I think we need to formally make a motion on that, so.
Yes, I would move that Councilmember Jay Rosa Pepe be your alternate on Kitsap Transit Board.
Second.
A motion and a second, further discussion of Jay being my alternate. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention.
One abstention.
Yep, all right, so that's done. Community Service Day last Saturday, Stormageddon was forecasted and it didn't come. And so unfortunately, though, we rescheduled it for this Saturday. I know some of the Rotarians in the room have a conflict, but the Latter-day Saints are most of our volunteers, so I'm accommodating them. So it's this Saturday, and I'm hoping that you guys are available some of you are available to help out. 9 o'clock, same sites.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
All
won't
right.
be available.
On the dais here tonight, I just got it today, was the broker's price opinion on the lot. And the lot was valued at $219,534. The right-of-way on Frederick, $57,116, for a combined value of $276,694. We had a meeting today, we're working on the purchase and sale, which I hope you concur with me that part of that purchase and sale, it comes with a development agreement. When that development agreement is executed, then we will execute the purchase and sale. So we're gonna bring forward a purchase and sale. You guys will bless the purchase and sale. This is the value. We've gotta demonstrate public amenities in the development agreement, correct? Is that what we talked about today? And so you'll bless a purchase and sale first, they can't close on that sale until the development agreement is executed. And then they could move forward. So that's where we're at in the process. I would hope in the next, no more than 60 days, I'll have that purchase and sale before you, for your consideration. Okay, and Masa Pizza wants to lease the site down here through the summer, and I didn't see a problem with it month to month, and nor does the potential buyer have a problem with it. If they've got some environmental, we're gonna put some language in there that with 48 hours notice, because they're gonna do some excavations for doing environmental work on the site. So we'll just have to put some language in there. And we're still contemplating a town hall meeting, May 29th, to discuss the pros and cons of single-use plastic bags. And that's all I have.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I incorrectly noted the time for the land use meeting as 7:30. It's the standing meeting time is 9:30.
9:30.
Yes.
Okay, the agenda needs to be corrected. Okay.
Right.
We have citizen comments, and then we're going to go into a, unfortunately, 20-minute executive session this evening. So.
Department heads?
Oh, department heads, you guys have anything? Sorry. Mr. Dorsey? All right, Mr. Crocker?
I was just going to confirm the Finance Committee meeting is at 5:15 on the 24th?
AM?
Yeah. PM, yeah. No,
Update
please.
the agenda as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is correct. Mr. Bond?
I just wanted to report that I, at last meeting, attended the Ruckles House workshop that conflicted with the regular council meeting date, and so I had some good conversations with the other electeds within the county, and also one of our representatives, not our representatives, but in Mason County, kind of on the west side of town. Forget the gentleman's name, but it was a really productive meeting, and I think
Randy
that-
Netherland, I would imagine.
Yes, thank you. The meeting was really productive. I was a little discouraged at first by the Ruckles House process that had been initiated, but I think that we've gotten into much more substantive discussions, and I'm optimistic that this could actually result in some positive changes now.
Can I ask, Nick, did you go to both sessions?
I did.
Was the content different?
It was, I think that the earlier professional staff discussion was a little bit more targeted and drilled down a little bit deeper, and I think the elected discussion was a little bit higher level and also tended to drift off into.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
France.
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Gates?
Nothing for me tonight.
Okay. Randy?
I will defer my time as well.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Can you give us an update on the silent chimes? The chimes aren't ringing.
Well, Mr. Hunter, why aren't the chimes ringing? We just gave you a promotion.
Oh, never mind. Did we not want to talk about it?
I don't.
Didn't even know.
We didn't even know.
Well, it's something you don't notice, actually, but I
Okay.
was asked the other day, like, why aren't they ringing? And I thought, oh, yeah, I haven't heard them in a
Haven't heard.
while.
Oh, and I thought I had.
In a while.
I don't know. We'll look into it.
Yeah.
We, unbeknownst to us, that the chimes aren't working.
Those seagulls.
Plug in the extension cord.
All right. Anything else for the good of the order? We're going to go to citizen comment. Anybody have comment this evening? Go ahead.
I just want to thank you all again so much. It's so late, but there was just one thing that I wanted to clarify for the record or clear up from my own standpoint is that I really don't think this legislation is to target any one local business. And it's all about the animal welfare. And the best analogy that I would suggest is that if you had a business that was polluting a stream, and you would give that business the opportunity, it's illegal to pollute the streams, you'd give the business the opportunity to change its business practices or, fine it or do whatever the legislative process would allow. And so this really isn't about targeting any one local business. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Others wishing to comment? Ms. Jerry?
Since you brought up the birds, and this is, I know nothing can be done, but we have herons that you would think would stay down at the water, but they find the Doug firs between my house and the 800 block a nice place to perch. And so the people there are having to cover their cars every day because the day they don't cover it, they have to wash them because when a heron plops, it's a mess. So just letting you know, there's more than just seagulls. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your comment. Okay, we are going into an executive session for 20 minutes pursuant to RCW 4230-110, and we plan to take no action afterwards.